We have lots of very good treatments for COVID. Why were we even talking about vaccines for the last 2 years?
It just seems to be an obsession. I was curious to know how many people actually took boosters last fall. And the CDC stopped reporting the actual number in 2023. They rely on what's called the NIS, the National Immunization Survey. It's a robocall survey to households. And they say, well, are you likely to take the vaccine? And that's how they're deriving this 15% number on boosters. So what I did at McCullough Foundation, what we did is we took the sales data for Moderna and for Pfizer and how much they sell the vaccines for. So how many vaccines were actually sold and the revenue, logged. And then there's a standard wastage calculation. You can actually figure out how many people took boosters last year. And the number we arrived at was 31 million people took boosters in the United States. It's 8.9% of the population.
Okay. And could you parse out, I suppose you can't, the way that numbers are being studied. Was this elderly? Was this appropriate? Were these people at very high risk from COVID?
You can't know. I can tell you this, though. My concern is since 29 states really have the full ACIP vaccine schedule up as a requirement to attend school. Some states like California, very hard to actually avoid that requirement. My concern, Dr. Drew, is the majority of the 31 million are actually children.
Oh my God. And like you're saying, college age kids, who are the ones that get the vaccine reactions.
Yeah, well, it's true, but I think this, it starts at 6 months on the ACIP schedule. Remember the ACIP schedule was trimmed down and then it was restored. And under the current verbiage, any kid who's overweight or decreased fitness would qualify for a vaccine. So it really depends on where they go and what shots are administered. But I wouldn't be surprised if young people, who are the ones who don't need really any protection, that they're the ones, ironically, who are getting shots. I can tell you my mother is in a nursing home here in Dallas, not far from my office, and I check on with her and she pays attention. She said in the nursing home, where the sickest and most frail people are, they have not talked about boosters for about 3 years or 4 years now.
Interesting. Well, we got to get Nick Holscher on this to get him to sort of compare outcomes in states where the ACIP is not being mandated and states where it is, to see both outcomes from COVID and outcome from the vaccine. I mean, that seems like a pretty simple study, no?
Well, our CDC knows who took the shots. Our CDC knows, who passes away and who doesn't. We have all the data. We just need to merge them. This would be the most wonderful HHS project. Do you know that the only country that's actually segregated vaccinated versus unvaccinated and all-cause mortality is the Czech Republic?
Well, that's interesting. Is there anything coming out of there? Anything interesting or?
Yeah, it doesn't look good. For Czech Republic, mortality is higher in those who took the vaccine. Of course, now you have to adjust that maybe they were older or sicker, but at the countervailing argument is what's called healthy vaccinee bias. You have to be healthy enough to go get a vaccine. And some very sick and decrepit people, low socioeconomic status, people really in trouble in life, end of life, they may not take vaccines. And there was a recent study, I don't know if you saw this one in the VA, that declared that the COVID-19 boosters reduced heart attack rates. Did you see that one?
Oh, I saw that. That was the one that Vinay Prasad took out after, wasn't it? That's the one he said specifically the conclusions were null and void. He's a very clear reader of medical literature.
Right. So the idea here is the VA has all the data on everybody who took the shots and the boosters. They could compare everybody who took the shots and then what the outcomes were. But when they choose, they're going to choose the fourth booster only. And those who took the flu shot and the booster or the flu shot and no booster, then they put a narrow window of follow-up. And then they count cardiac outcomes who are test positive PCR and then all outcomes. I mean, it's cherry picking The French did this, by the way, with COVID vaccines and cancer, and they declared, no cancer signal. I'm cautioning people to be very, very cautious when you see these conclusions. Now that VA study, by the way, that declared COVID vaccines reduce heart attack rates, that made MedPage Today. It made all the physician newsletters. Here's a benefit. Yep. Look at the information carefully. There's no reason why the fourth booster would be magical. And, if you looked at all-cause event rates, there was a 6% vaccine efficacy, 6. So essentially, it was negligible. I would not look at this. Mechanistically, there's no reason why a COVID vaccine would protect against cardiovascular events. And we do know, and the FDA agrees, that it does cause heart inflammation, myocarditis, and other cardiac problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I still can't understand why we can't speak about Alpha and Delta as a different illness, literally a different illness than the Omicron era. It's so weird. They keep hearkening back, almost like an addiction to the early days, where there could be a case made, I think, for more aggressive interventions and protecting old people, and all the things that it was a serious time, and that ended. That just ended. And we end up now in the Omicron era when this is a much milder illness, and they just won't talk about it that way.
Well, a couple observations. Remember, we had the wild type strain in 2020, and Americans experienced the next version, which was Alpha. And then other regions got the next two variants. So South Africa got Beta. And then, interestingly, the worst was the center part of Brazil got Gamma. We skipped those two. And what happened in the United States is we moved on to Delta. And Delta became this prolonged, I think, very severe version of the virus. I know some of the most difficult cases were Delta, people sick for months. And then around December 10th or so, there was a CDC MMWR had a announcement that a new strain was discovered, Omicron, and Omicron uniquely closed the immunologic door on Delta. It literally didn't allow any more Delta strains to replicate.
Yeah.
So it just shut off Delta overnight. And then Omicron, I think, was a markedly milder illness.